Welcome, everybody. It's going to wait a few seconds as I see the participants number going up. Courtney, just giving me a thumbs up that that's what I'm looking at before I start talking too much. Great. Welcome, everybody. This is a webinar presented by the Rural Resilience Project and Mainspring Consulting with funding provided by the California Department of Fish and Wildlife Cannabis Restoration Grant Program. Courtney, can you give me a thumbs up that you can see me and hear me okay? Great. I'm going to arrow forward a slide and arrow back a slide. Just give me a thumbs up that you can see the slide change as well. Slide change, you see that? Great. Okay, I'm going to go back. Super. I just watching the number rise up and give it another 30 seconds. I'm already deviating from our plan. Welcome, everybody. Just giving another welcome moment as everybody is coming in. Those that may be having webinar issues. Courtney, there's a raised hand. Can you see that? And will you handle that? Great, thank you. Super. And so once again, this is a webinar. The title is, as you can see on the screen, the welcome screen, Navigating Technical Assistance Services for Mendocino County Cultivators. My name is Chantal Simon-Pietri, and I'll be your presenter. And this webinar is offered by the Rural Resilience Project and funded by the California Department of Fish and Wildlife Cannabis Restoration Grant Program. And so I'm going to roll. And for anybody that joins later or is watching this later in time, you'll know that it's recorded. And so if you missed something, you can go back, grab the recording, and go back in time and listen to it and slow it down if there's things that you miss. If you have any questions, this webinar will be conducted using the Q&A feature, not the chat feature. And so if you have any questions throughout at any time, just type them into the Q&A option, which should be in your Zoom controls at the bottom of your screen. And again, if any of these controls aren't working for you or having technical difficulties, just write down what your questions are, jot them down on the piece of paper on the side. Every single image that we'll be showing through the webinar has the Rural Resilience Program website at the bottom. So ruralresilienceproject.com is their website, and you can email hello@ruralresilienceproject.com, and you can see it on the bottom right of your screen now. So you can even open up an email and jot questions right into that right now and send it afterwards. And if we don't answer any of your questions that appear during the Q&A, which will be curating that, then we will respond to you next week by email. So here we go. Welcome, everybody. Today's webinar, here we go, full on. I'm going forward from here. This webinar is about technical assistance services and how to navigate those for Mendocino County cultivators. And I'm going to the next screen. Courtney, you see that second screen? Thanks, great. So funny picture of me. My name is Chantal Simon-Pietri. I am this project's technical director, and that's my direct email address there if you'd like to reach out to me at chantal@mainspringnow.com. I have a company based in Ukiah called Mainspring Consulting, excuse me. And I specialize in environmental compliance. I've been living in the Ukiah area for about 21 years. And my education background is in geology, hydrology, and law. And I've worked professionally in a really wide range of fields, from environmental policy and advocacy and education to straight up normal law to environmental consulting and permitting, watershed restoration, and also into the field of conflict resolution and collaborative governance. So those of you who have been involved in the cannabis policy and permitting pathway, since it started here in Mendocino County, you might be familiar with me. I've been involved since the 9.31 era through to now, through lots of different versions of what I've offered. But a lot of what I do is get out on properties, walk them, and assess what is in compliance or out of compliance according to the different environmental agencies, and then pass that information to the cultivator and assist them with the process of walking through from where they are in that moment and to where they need to get to in order to continue towards the path of full licensure with the state, the local authority, and all of the environmental agencies. So to give you that background, this project, excuse me, is a collaborative project between the Rural Resilience Project, which is a nonprofit based in the Anderson Valley, which was founded in 2020 by Mendocino-based cultivators and cannabis consultants. Courtney Bailey is the executive director of that entity, and she's got her video on for my comfort. Thanks, Courtney, for showing your face. I know I'm talking to somebody. Courtney and I have worked together for 5+ years, starting with work in the early days of being part of the large group of people that worked really hard to create MCA, the Mendocino Cannabis Alliance. And then in a few different offerings came this idea that I'll go into a little bit more, like how did we end up creating this grant program? But this webinar and the project itself and the grant that we're funded under is funded by the Cannabis Restoration Grant Program, which is a fund administered by the California Department of Fish and Wildlife. The source for its funds is directly related to, collection of taxation, a portion of taxation at the point of sale of any cannabis product in the retail outlets statewide. And so there's a large program that collects that money and then distributes it to many different programs, one of which is the Cannabis Restoration Grant Program through CDFW. And that grant program has a process by which you apply for a grant and you go through revisions and eventually you're approved, and then you perform the services under your grant. And this webinar and this technical assistance services project is part of what we were funded to offer. If you have more questions about RRP, you can go to their website again, ruralresilienceproject.com. Moving on here, a little bit of what we're going to do today. So there's going to be a lot of me talking to you, and then we'll go to Q&A. And so bear with that. We've all taken part in a lot of webinars that have more or less interactive ability, which sometimes has been frustrating and sometimes relieving, depending upon how you wanted to participate. Today, how we're offering this one is that it's going to be me talking to you, and these are the things we're going to go through. We just did our introductions, and then we're going to go into what the objectives are for today. We're going to zoom out and look at the big picture, and the bulk of the time will be spent discussing what technical assistance services are, the different categories, and then we'll discuss who is eligible for them, how we'll be determining who will receive services, and then we'll go into question and answer period and our next steps. I'm going to move right into the big picture, into today's objectives. So objectives for today are really simple. There's two of them. One is that we want to make sure that everybody who participates, either live right now or after the fact, witnessing the webinar later on their own time, understand the purpose and scope of the available technical assistance services. So in later slides, as I just showed, I'll be going through a more detailed review of what the different technical assistance services are. The second objective is for participants to understand who is eligible and how do you apply and become selected. Zooming out to the big picture. It's interesting to not have anybody to talk to, so I'm pausing for a reply, but there's no reply, so I'm going to keep on rolling. So big picture. Some of this I already mentioned slightly, but I thought it'd be helpful for folks to understand what is this and how did we get here and what does it look like in the big picture. So given the context that I shared about my education and experience background and work with Courtney and RRP over the last almost 10 years now of witnessing the rollout of many environmental compliance programs through different state agencies, starting with the Regional Water Board and then later the State Water Board, CDFW, the Division of Water Rights, the county, things related to CEQA, the DCC, all of those. There's been, in my mind, a lack of appropriate and timely technical assistance services to support small business owners receive the information and support that they need to successfully operate their business within the county and the state. And this was something we recognized, from the get-go, way back before we rolled into our current version of the ordinance that we're operating under now, like in the transition time from 9.31 into the next program that was offered. And it is what it is. We live where we live. We live in a rural community. There's limited government resources. And so this offering is coming and it shows up when it shows up, and it's 100% available through CDFW being willing to fund this type of an offering. They also recognized that it's extremely costly for people to go through the compliance process, especially related to their agency's requirement, their department's requirements. And they developed their cannabis restoration grant program funding and had a track of it that is specifically dedicated for what they call qualified cultivators, that are people that are operating with a local equivalent of a permit and a state license. And I'll go more into the eligibility later on, but it's interesting to switch to be working with them as they're funding something rather than asking for something. And that's really pleasant. We're super grateful that they're willing to fund this. They worked with Courtney and I over a long period of time, almost 2 years, to develop our concept, pre-application, full application, revised version, all the way through to being approved. I believe we were approved in the fall, and this is the first of the education component offerings. So thanks to CDFW, and also thanks to Courtney RRP for hanging with us through the process to develop this concept. The grant program requires that you have to have a fiscal entity that's eligible for applying for the funds. So as a lot of you know from applying for grants or working in this realm, you can't apply directly if you're the cultivator. You have to find an entity that was willing to work with you. And they can be a 501c of some type of nonprofit, depending upon their designation. It can be a government entity, or it can be a tribe. And locally, we have excellent nonprofits, but we didn't have a lot who were ready and new enough to jump and go and work in the cannabis realm and offer quality services. And RRP was ready and willing to pivot towards that with their experience in the cultivation realm already, and having already gone through some of the compliance processes themselves. So RRP and I partnered, applied for the funding. CDFW approved and awarded us after some rounds of review and revisions. And here we go. Now this webinar is basically telling you what are we offering under all of what we proposed to them that they approved. So on the second part, I can use my mouse. Here we go. Now you can see that. See my little blue mouse? You do. Okay, cool. So the second part, we have technical assistance services project. That's what this is. And there are 3 main components to it. You can receive technical assistance. And again, I already said a few times, we're going to go into all of these. That's the majority of the grant. You'll see on the next slide how that breaks down, how these 3 components break down the budget that we were approved for. And we also applied for funds to what they call capacity build, RRP. A capacity build includes everything related to bringing a nonprofit entity, all of the infrastructure and support that they need, and documents and other professional advice, so that they can operate fiscally responsibly in order to receive and administer large grant funds, just like this one is. And then the third component under our project is an education arm. And so I'm going to go to the next slide over here by pivoting. There we go. So here's a breakdown of what we applied for and what we received. The purpose of the grant is to utilize planning grant funds to identify and remove barriers to license transition through the grant term, which ends in September of 2027. All CDFW CRGP grants are for initial terms of 3 years. So from the date that you sign all your documents, you have 3 years, 36 months to complete the entire proposal. And it all is very delineated as far as timelines, deliverables, milestones, reports. It's really well documented, and you march along according to what you propose that you're going to do, and you have to demonstrate along the way that you are achieving what you said you would. So this grant is a planning grant. So just a little bit about grants. in a lot of grants, and there's so many grants out there, all, from the US government to things offered locally to things at the state level. But in this realm of CDFW grants, they have two categories. There's planning or there's implementation. Planning is basically a proposal to, through the grant once it's funded, obtain all of the materials necessary to know the costs for what later things will be that you're going to do. Implementation is the doing. So under planning, it would include any assessments, any design plans, obtaining any permits, obtaining construction estimates, developing budgets, developing guidance documents, and all the infrastructure to manage the grant itself, and how the entities that are covered under the grant work together. And then implementation is doing the work on the ground. So in an example for an LSA, a planning grant for a CDFW LSA would be hiring the engineer to develop a design plan, any of the studies that are needed to size a culvert, any sort of sediment delivery, erosion control planning, pricing out the cost of construction all the way through to like obtaining multiple contractor bids, putting all that together, all of the time and services it costs to develop what all of those numbers are. I'll finish all of that under your planning grant, and then you take that end number that you need to do the actual work, and you submit a second grant for implementation. So this grant is a planning grant. We're not going to be doing any actual work on the ground on anybody's property under this grant. We'll be going to some properties, we'll be developing some plans, we'll be giving some recommendations that people can do themselves, but the grant itself is not going to fund any work on anybody's property. Later, I'll discuss part of the direct technical assistance is to write a subsequent implementation grant, and I'll go into that later. Looking over at my notes. So we're coming back into this, the total grant that we were awarded was 3.1 million, which is huge. That was quite, definitely the biggest grant I've ever applied for. And 90% of that is allotted for direct technical assistance services, which is roughly about 2.8 million. So small component is going to education, which I'll discuss later. I already shared some about what the capacity building part is. Direct technical assistance services is that you as a cultivator, if you are deemed eligible, you apply, and we'll cover how to apply later. And we review what your needs are, and then we will assign your let's say your property or your you as the cultivator to certain service categories. And then you will work with the subcontractor that is going to be leading on providing the services under that category. And I'll go into all of this in subsequent slides. We're actually going into it right next. Okay, so I'm going to go on to the next slide. If there's one slide of this whole presentation that shows the most, this is it. So this is where I'm going to go into each one of these boxes in subsequent slides. But the idea right now is to give you a concept of what are the service categories? What are we funded in order with approval to provide? And they fall into these 6 categories. Take a scan of this, just like take a look at it. We're going to, like I said, go into each one, but these are broken out into, like I already said, categories. So there's a CDFW LSAA category. There's a lot of acronyms in our world. I'm assuming that a lot of people, hopefully everybody on the webinar knows what these acronyms are, but they are broken out in subsequent slides, some of them. But CDFW is the California Department of Fish and Wildlife Lake and Streambed Alteration Agreement, LSAA. And so this webinar is presented with the concept that everybody has some background level of understanding of what that is, because you're at this stage. You're still, if you're here, hopefully still have a license at the local level and the state level, whatever degree it is, whether it's provisional, whether you still have an application receipt, whether you have your annual. But to get to that stage, you had to do some process with the California Department of Fish and Wildlife. And according to our state law, there's a requirement that cultivators show that you either have a final LSA or a notice that says no notification required. We call those NNR letters. They're like what I call the golden ticket internally. If you get a golden ticket, you're like, sweet, I don't have to keep that agency looking over my shoulder. It's one you can check off and deal with the others. So in the LSA box number 1, I'm going to go into these in subsequent slides, but these are some of the ideas that fit into this box. Things that they require according to their LSA. And these are, you already have a final LSA. So you might have some compliance plans. There's a number of those. You might have some reporting requirements, design plans, or have something that's administrative or term related. The second box is biological, number 2. The biological realm covers anything related to a state, some entity saying you need to have some sort of a biological survey done. There's multiple ways that that can get triggered, and I'll cover those when I go more into the biology slide later. The third category is LSAA related supplies. This was a specific, these are things basically that you need in order to comply with your LSA. You might need, if you have a surface water diversion, you might need to install a meter. You might need to install many meters, depending upon how many different surface water diversions you have, or sources of water, whether for domestic or cultivation irrigation. You may also need to install erosion control supplies. So that would be like straw wattles, silt fencing, things that help prevent sediment from being transported into streams, which is something that our region suffers from and heavily impacts all of the species that rely on water to survive, especially the stream-based species, aquatic species. So that program, again, I'll go into the supplies category later in a later slide. The fourth category is just a general other agency compliance. So again, this is looking at, these are the things we're eligible to provide services under according to our grant agreement with CDFW. And this means that they are paying for the consultants and team members that are professionals and experts in these realms to offer you these services, to review what your materials are, to determine what categories we think you need support with, or you've already identified it through your application, could go both ways, and then to offer you services to meet those. It's not going to cover everything, but it covers a lot. And some of the other agency compliance categories, subcategories are things related to the County Cannabis Department, Division of Water Rights, Water Resources Control Board, Department of Cannabis Control, or CAL FIRE. The fifth category, we're again going to all these in detail. So if you got questions, just keep, make a note on the side. We can come back to it, or you can email afterwards. Excuse me. The fifth category is titled Implementation Grant. I've been writing grants for a few years now. It's definitely not something I've done for 20 years. I've done it for about the past 5. I've had every grant that I've applied for funded and learned through a lot of hard knocks, like what works. And I wanted to just go straight into implementation grant writing, just like, let's write the grant that funds all the work that people need to do on their properties. But you can't successfully write and administer that grant if you don't know the exact costs, because you get funded for a set amount. It's hard to change that amount subsequently once you're funded. So you need to know in advance, how much money do you need to do the implementation? And so hence I explained earlier, planning versus implementation. Under the category 5, we will basically we're going to go through a review process, and we're selecting people of those that are applying and have applied. And as a group of them will be able to go on and be covered under a future implementation grant. And this grant, our current CDFW grant, covers the cost of developing that proposal. Developing proposals to CRGP is not an easy process. They take a lot of time to get all the way through to final approval. They're very detail oriented. It stretches across multiple disciplines. And so CDFW is willing to use these funds to cover the cost of developing a future application that they will then fund to cover implementation costs. So it's basically a grant to write a grant. That's category 5. And then category 6 is other design services. And I'll go into this one on another slide, but it basically covers the things that are listed there. And these are offered by a number of different partners that are covered under this program. I'm going to go into going into detail on number 1 right now. So the first group under CDFW, what I'd call CDFW plans. Courtney, is the screen still showing okay and you can still hear me okay? All right, good. So this and the next two slides are all specific under category 1, CDFW LSAA related services. And this first slide right now shows required plans or reports. So you can see plans and reports. Do you see my cursor there? Yeah. I won't block it there. I block it. It's this big blue blob. So plans or reports, and these are specific to people that have existing final LSAs. So you've already gone through the process of notifying, receiving a draft, getting to a final. And in your final LSA, somewhere in the document, it varies depending upon where they put it, depending upon when you received your final, as some of their templates changed as they went from paper to EPIMS, the Environmental Permit Information Management System, some of that evolution. So there's a lot of different ways that an LSA can look, a final LSA can look. If you have a final LSA, it means it has been signed by whoever notified, who's the project proponent, which is most likely the cultivator or the responsible party for the actions that are going to take place on the property, and the second signature by some supervisor from CDFW. And it's either physically signed, like they used to require a wet signature of the earlier ones, or through EPINs, you digitally sign, and then you need to have a concurrence page attached to your final LSA that shows that you really have a final LSA. So again, hopefully people are aware of this. If you're not aware of all this, we can recognize that through some of your answers once you apply and the documents that you share. And we'll go through, as I talk later, about how do we offer the technical assistance services to be able to help you know you need to do these things, or you haven't yet gotten to this stage. But for this slide, plans and reports, this shows, these are some examples of plans or reports that DFW requires. They're generally written in as a term or condition to your LSAA with a time period within which they need to be supplied to DFW. And the examples are diversion infrastructure. So diversion infrastructure is, let's say you have a spring or a stream diversion to take water from a surface water from a stream or a river, to put the water into storage, to later use it for domestic use, or which is household use, or to use it for cultivation irrigation. Either of those, or stock watering. The use is less significant than the fact that they regulate your taking of the water, how you take it, when you take it, what rate you take it at, and the actual infrastructure. And so a diversion infrastructure plan, DIP is what that's called, is generally a diagram showing pipe diameter, materials used, where the water goes from A to B, and then C to be used. That's one of the required plans you have to give them. Water management plan is a different type of plan, but it's directly related also to surface water diversion, and it describes not the technical infrastructure that's used, like 2-inch PVC or screening on the intake of a certain size of screening to not allow for newts, for example, to get into your intake. The water management plan more describes how you will meet the terms and conditions of your LSA water diversion specific terms, which can be like, you can only take 3 gallons per minute from July to October, and you can take 5 gallons per minute from October to August or October to June, but you have to have 80% bypass flow. They write in all these terms, and the design behind those terms is so that water stays in the stream year round, or within that close area of the stream area that you're diverting, for all of the species that rely upon it, so that you're not taking 100% of the water 12 months out of the year. So those two plans, diversion infrastructure and water management, are two of the types of plans that if you need those, your LSA says that you need them, you haven't yet drafted and provided them, or haven't gotten them through to approval, those are things that you can apply to the RRP or to this grant, and we can develop those documents for you, pass them back to you, and then you submit them to CDFW. They also require erosion control plans. That's just like what it sounds like. They can be specific to whatever type of work that you've done, or if you did grading and where they were out there and they saw you needed to put in erosion control. A little bit more complex plans, these generally require a biologist and a civil engineer to develop our restoration and revegetation plans. So if you, let's say you have a pond that you need to remove on your LSA, a stream restoration plan, an SRP, we call those in my office, those are required. When you are pulling out a pond and you're recreating a stream channel, then you also need to revegetate it. And that would be the stream revegetation plan. So same thing, if your LSA calls for those plans, those you can apply for this grant to cover the cost of developing them. We'll give you back the plans professionally prepared, and then you pass them to CDFW. Anybody that has a water diversion, you need to report your annual water use to many different agencies. Division of Water Rights, if it's a surface water diversion under a water right, also to the water board for your cannabis water usage, and DFW requires the same reporting. Each agency asks for a little different version of, the breakdown of what you use and when. Some it's by, more specific, like by day. Some it's by month. Some it's only for when you're diverting. Some they want to know diverted to storage volume and then put to use volume. And so you can often take a report that you created for a different agency and modify it to meet CDFW needs. The last plan that I've listed here, and there might be more, but these are some that I commonly see that people need and haven't done yet, is an invasive species management plan. I think most people have experienced, if you have a pond, a bullfrog management plan would meet that. So there's some really simple ways to develop an invasive species management plan that meets DFW requirements. And on some of these, you don't need to have a professional write them. There's some templates you can use, and you just have to go out there and see if the frogs are there, if they're not there, and modify your plan based upon what you see. And some other invasive species, maybe you have you stocked a pond with a certain type of fish that they don't want you to have there anymore, or you have some plant species. There's a lot of examples of plant species, and this invasive species management is a whole discipline and requires iterative annual pursuit for it to be successful, and adjustment of what you're doing. So you have to monitor and adjust to actually get it to work. And it may not be 100% successful, but it can at least control spread. And that's a lot of what their DFW is responsible for, protecting the native species. And this is one of the ways that they have to implement things to follow that. That was a long talk. There's a lot in this one. A lot of people fall into this category. So moving on to the next DFW, again, this is under category number 1. The other categories we'll go through more quickly because there's less that falls under them. The next category are DFW LSAA term period related forms. So let's say your LSA expires like February 1st and you needed an extension and you haven't done one yet. That would be not ideal. So let's use an example more like your LSA expires on June 1st and you're not going to have done the work yet. You've got a work completion date that you're not going to meet. Now would be the time to prepare, or soon, an extension request. If you need to modify your LSA, remove a stream crossing, that they probably wouldn't go for that. Maybe you need to add something else that you didn't originally include. That would be a modification or an amendment. Or if you want to change the name on the LSA, the parcel ownership has changed, or the responsible party is changing who's going to be responsible for fulfilling the work of the LSA, those would be covered under modifications or amendments. And LSAs, if you've already done all of the work, there's a requirement that once the work is complete, you need to submit a completion report. The completion reports actually could have gone on the other slide, but it's a simple form saying we did the work, here's some pictures of it, it's working fine. I'm simplifying things greatly. The last category that falls under forms here is if you have an operation of law agreement, which many people locally do. Many of them were issued in 2017. They have 5-year terms, so they are either expired or coming up for expiration. Is that right? Am I off on my math? Basically, if you have an op law and you cannot renew an op law, you have to notify through the traditional front door to get an LSA. So if you fall into that category and you need to submit a notification, we can assist with the costs of preparing the notification for you, assessing what's needed, doing the communication with DFW. So that's covered under what I call term period forms, things related to making a change to your time period, more time, or a new notification. Courtney, am I good? I'm moving on. I see my timing, so I'm going to move on. Okay, the third, this is all still under the LSAA category. DFW LSAA design plans. So any sort of design plans, these are for folks who have a draft LSA and not a final. And you need something, some sort of a document that DFW is requiring in order for them to issue a final LSA. These are 99% of the time something needs to be developed by an engineer or somebody who can do stream crossing culvert design and watershed delineation to know the size of the culvert that you need. There's a process to do that. It's not that complex to do it once you know how to do it, but there are some on the ground, and then formulas you need to calculate and determinations made. So some of these are much more complex. You definitely need an engineer to do them. So this grant can cover the cost for those engineer design plans to be developed for your site. And who gets to receive this service will go through a selection panel process that's a team of us, including me as a technical director, RRP, and also CRGP. And it's going to be needs-based, and it's going to have some prioritization, which I'll discuss later on. Not so much prioritization, but there's a lot of people that need support. We know that. And whether or not we have enough money in this current offering to meet everybody's needs or not, we don't know yet. We'll see how many people actually apply. And I'll go into some of that later. So category 2 is biological assessment documentation. And what the asterisk is that any document that's created is going to meet the standard of the California Environmental Quality Act, Environmental Impact Report, which is a standard. Basically, we had to choose some level that we were going to write these documents to meet, and we're going to write them to meet that. So there was an era when it looked like under the draft EIR, that everybody was going to need to have some sort of biological documentation in order to transition from provisional to annual. Policy-wise, some of that is shifting, how the DCC, the county, and DFW are working together. When we wrote the grant, and then through early revisions, we recognized that we thought this was going to be a substantial area of need. How substantial it is relative to other needs is still to be seen. Regardless, it's still an area that we can offer support in. So what this means is if you have a sensitive species and habitat review form that the county filled out, sent to DFW, and DFW wrote back a document called Project Referral Comments, PRC, and it says, do a bioassessment, field and desktop. That service of hiring the biologist to go to your property and to do the desktop and field assessment and floristic survey can be covered by the grant. If you have an existing report, but your site boundaries changed, or the existing report that you had didn't go to the standard to meet California CEQA, we can write an addenda to be attached to your existing report. If you only had a desktop assessment or a field survey was done outside of the floristic season, we can cover the cost of going and doing the floristic survey. If you specifically received a mitigation plan, so some impact was done or there's a sensitive species on or near your parcel, the cost of developing the mitigation plan can be covered by the grant. And this is site and situation specific. It's very site and situation specific, from one parcel to the next, and where the cultivation site is located relative to a water body or a wetland or a particular type of tree or plant that houses a particular species. It's on the list of sensitive species will determine what's needed. This is a great offering. This was a big deal to bring this into our grant. It wasn't what we originally conceived of offering, and this came about from DFW requesting that we expand to offer this, and it was a very substantial expansion. And to offer all of this bioassessment services, we're partnered with WRA Inc., and I'll go into them in the partnership page at the end. So I covered number 1, LSA related category, and number 2, bio, and now I'm going into number 3, which is LSA related supplies. This just a quick bit on this is that, again, DFW said, hey, we want to help. A lot of things that they see is that people that have a surface water diversion or don't have their meter installed, or they had to put in erosion control, or they should, and they didn't buy it and they didn't install it. These things can be expensive when all of the little expenses tally up to being insurmountable for cultivators, for small businesses. And so they were willing to cover the costs, make funds available to help cultivators have access to these LSAA compliance related supplies. So apply to the program if you're deemed eligible, which we'll go into how we determine that. and you need these things, the cost of them can be covered by the grant. How we go about a transaction, we'll work that out with you through discussion later on with the RRP. But just know that meters, some folks, they've got 3 springs and the water goes to 4 places. And because of the different agencies, they need to put in a meter at 2 sites per water diversion. So it's 6 meters altogether. Even if they go for the cheap one, that can add up to being a substantial expense. So now moving on to category 4. The 4th category is implementation grant development. And like I said earlier on, we were approved to, what we had to get really specific in our proposal to provide a numeric. How many people, how many sites would we write an implementation grant for? And some lessons learned, we didn't want to bite off more than we could chew, and we also needed to get specific, and we wanted to be able to not do it for just one person. So we wrote the grant to say that for a minimum of 10 sites would be included in a future grant proposal to CRGP for implementation costs. That could include any additional required permits that you need before you can actually break ground, the cost of the contractor and equipment operation services, so the person that drives the excavator or the backhoe or whatever the heavy equipment is, the materials and the transport of that material. So if you need to have fill material, if you need rock for riprap, if you need rock for fill, the cost of the pipe for culverts, all of the things that go into doing the work on the ground to meet a CDFW LSA requirement, those would all be included in an implementation grant. And the concept for this is that there's a number of people in the county that are eligible for services under this grant that have shovel-ready projects. Shovel-ready is like a DFW happy term for grant lands, meaning you're ready to get money and do the work. You don't need another permit. You don't need an engineer design. You know the cost because you've got some sort of contractor estimate, or that's a small task to do in order to receive funds and then do the work. So CDFW agreed to fund the cost of writing the grant to get the grant to do this work. So this is like in a later part of what we're offering. It's not in the front loaded. The front load part right now is more bioassessment things because those are really seasonally required and immediate LSA needs. I say in the later part, maybe I want to say like within 6 months, we'll start to have an idea of who those 10 sites might be and whether or not we can do more than 10 and what is needed to get the whole proposal ready to then write it, to submit it to DFW. That's that. So going on, category 5 is other agency compliance. This is, like I said earlier on, when I said the money slide on everything, showing all the 6 categories, this is what we're just calling other agency compliance support. These are kind of organizational titles to help us keep the things separate in our brains when we're seeing people's applications and recognizing what some of their needs are. And also just from the combined collective experience of the professionals that are involved under the grant, what do we know that people need? What are we hearing out there in the community? And so it's kind of a catch-all. And on the bottom, I put limited technical assistance, limited TA services to address certain deficiencies associated with the above entities. It's super legalistic, but basically it's saying we probably can't do everything that any one of these agencies needs for you to do in order to become compliant or achieve the last step of compliance. But there may be some things associated with these agencies or others that our team could assist you with. So any sort of stumbling block that's holding you back from just like checking off that outstanding thing that you needed to do. Examples like this, let's say for the county or for the DCC, if you have a site plan and you did it yourself, or you had somebody develop, you don't develop it and they don't work with you anymore and you need to update it, and updating it is challenging for you, or you need to update it and make it, a little bit more meeting the current standard of how site plans need to look, we can do that work for you. I say we, like the great we of the team of professionals that are covered under the grant. If you have, maybe you needed to apply for an administrative permit because of your zoning under Mendocino County regulations in order to operate your cultivation, but you haven't yet had that admin permit reviewed, submitted, finalized, or it's just like stalled out with the county, we can help assessing like, where is it at? Is it still necessary? Not necessary. If it's necessary, what do you need to do in order to move it along? The Division of Water Rights has annual reporting requirements. We can assist with that. And a lot of these things have been kind of latent requirements in that the agencies haven't been active in saying, hey, you're out of compliance and now there's going to be a problem until recently. Now I'm starting to see DFW start to tell people, you haven't submitted your reports. So we're telling the DCC that you're out of compliance. So now is the time to do something. But I would expect, different people have different approaches to this, but if you know you need to do something and you don't know how to do it and you want help with it, it might fall under what we can cover under this category. Same for the State Water Resources Control Board. That could be something like a site management plan, which is required for all enrollees under the Cannabis General Order, or other plans, so we can write those plans. Some things related to working with the DCC, that's kind of a big catch-all, but you might have some DCC related requirement that we could assist with. And same thing with CAL FIRE. So I would think of this one as like, in my mind, I'm thinking of it as like the catch-all for low-hanging fruit for simple things that we could assist people with getting off their list of things they need to do or handle. And so that it at no cost to the cultivator. We'll review your documents, we'll confer with you as far as what you need, we'll prepare that, we'll pass it back to you to submit to these agencies. And the last category is other design services. So I like to write grants that are really holistic. I love that term. It means a lot of different things to different people, but basically we wanted to look at what are some other ways we could assist with not just getting people to compliant and licensed, but also a step beyond that into more sustainable operations from the site management side of things or resource management side of things. And so we've partnered with a number of professionals that are going to offer design services to a selected group of sites. So that means if you're one of the ones that are in the category for this, we'll come out to your property, you'll have a consultation, and the end result will be a design plan document or documents. And these aren't related to any agency compliance process. They're in addition to that. Things could look at like water efficiency assessments or water use analysis, looking at your irrigation systems design. Are there places where you could be more efficient, or you could change some of the infrastructure, or your pumping mechanisms, or how you move the water from here to there so that you have better pressure, different quality, more reliable supply. And then also storage, distribution, it should also say collection on there. So where are you getting your water from? Is there potential to develop a rainwater collection system so you can shift off of surface or groundwater reliance for cultivation water, or partially, or develop numerous systems so that you're more resilient in the event like a pump goes out or no rain comes or there's no sun to power the pump, all those things if you're on a solar system. And the last category is holistic site planning. We've partnered with a permaculture educator and really well experienced cannabis compliance consultant from Humboldt. And he will be coming on site and helping folks look at their site planning from a really holistic point of view, from everything related to all the compliance steps to so many things like pollinator plantings, all of the water associated things, companion planting, looking at species protection, and kind of like just what it says, holistic site planning is just broader than trying to meet one specific compliance need or one specific resource centered concept into a more comprehensive look at how you're operating on your property. So that closes, and I breathe now. I'm gonna take a sip of water. Jesus, excuse me. That covers what I was gonna do in all of that, which I'm right on time. Was what's the scope of technical assistance services? Since I got a minute, I'm going to flash back and show this slide. So again, just big picture. If you want to take a quick picture of this, if you've got a phone or however people like to do those things, you can always go back and watch this recording later on, but this is the scope of service categories. Things that fall into these 6 general categories. We can help you with costs associated with meeting or preparing or assessing, generating documents to address all of this. And if I was to put, we had some concepts about where we thought the majority of the money would be necessary. I know a lot of people need things for category 5, implementation costs. So But we didn't want to write a grant that said we write everybody's implementation grant because we don't know how much that's going to cost. We had to make some, because we had to give them a budget to say, we're going to do this and stay on time, stay on that budget. So we had to pick a group of 10, and we had our civil engineer partner prepare like a worst case scenario cost for a certain property, just to give some sort of a number to DFW saying, fund us to do this for this level of complexity of a site based upon our experience of what we've seen around the county in our rural area, the status of roads and stream crossings. I think a lot of folks we thought 99% of people were need biological assessments in order to transition provisional to annual. I think things have shifted more recently with the DCC transitioning people. And so without the need for the biological assessment, that may change. I'm not going to say more on that now. Just we thought we'd put all the money in 2, and then maybe more money is going to go to 1 now. And we're not rigid as far as what portion of the service category, what portion of the TA funds fall in each one of these categories. We're just allowed, we wrote into the grant that we could cover all of these types of services. I'm going to go back forward and move into now the eligibility. Who's eligible? How are we determining who we're offering the services to? And this will be pretty much the last about 10 minutes before we go into Q&A. Courtney, keep rolling. Good. Okay, cool. So I said some of this before, but when we started drafting this, there was whatever X number of 100 licensed cultivators in the county. It's been a couple of years since we started drafting, so there's been some attrition. Right now we're assuming that we wrote everything assuming that we wouldn't have enough funds to meet the needs that were out there. And we had to come up with some way of prioritizing or limiting. But even outside of our internal prioritization or selection process, these 4 categories are minimum requirements in order to be eligible to receive funding. RRP is a nonprofit, and in their mission, they are dedicated to offering services within the boundaries of Mendocino County only. So site location, your cultivation site has to be in Mendocino County in order to be eligible to receive funds. The CDFW Cannabis Restoration Grant Program Qualified Cultivator Funding Opportunity, QC is our code for that. The QC fund has the next 3 limitations of license status, type, and financial interest. These are not up to us. We could not provide funding or services to a cultivator that does not meet status, type, or the financial interest requirements. So we know that some people may be kicked out because of these things, and we're sorry about that. It's just that this fund that we're funded under, these parameters come from them. So license status, you have to have an active provisional license or annual license issued by the Department of Cannabis Control. License type, they will only fund license types that are outdoor or mixed light tier 1. They currently will not provide funding in support of cultivation style or type that is mixed light tier 2. Some of these may shift over the life of our grant, but for now, this is what we're allowed to do. And so stay in communication with us. If you've already applied and you got back that you're not eligible, we're not like kicking everybody out and never going to contact you again. If we can find a way to help people that have applied for support as time changes or as DFW's parameters change, we will. But for now, I totally assume you need to meet these. And the last one is financial interest. At CDFW, their Qualified Cultivator Fund was designed to assist folks with smaller size operations. So cultivator has to have ownership or financial interest in a commercial cannabis business, cumulative square footage. So all licenses they may have a financial interest in, cumulative need to have 20,000 square feet or less, with a strong preference that it be 10,000 square feet or less. So it's really written to meet the folks that are at this cottage and small level in the DCC license types. So eligibility, these are the basic parameters for eligibility, again, connecting back to RRP requirements and CDFW's requirements. Then once you've applied and we've deemed that you're eligible, again, like I said earlier, we thought we were going to have more applications than we could meet the need for. And so initially we were looking at like a scoring and selection process. And We've been able to shift from that, but we're still going to use it in order to prioritize and you got to choose, like, how do we help people in an organized way? And as the funders, CDFW, they have a say in us, doing some low-hanging fruit, easy things, and also going into the places where there is a more likely an impact that they would like to stop have happening, an impact to a sensitive species or resource, such as a water body. So some of the things that we're using to guide us are these four things. If you're located in what's called a priority watershed, the State Water Resources Control Board has a map which you can search cannabis priority watersheds, and you can map where your parcel is. If you're in a cannabis priority watershed, then we're noting that at your time of application. Is one of the first steps I do during my early technical review, is to go and map where your parcel is exactly and make a note if you're in a cannabis priority watershed. A few of them off the top of my head are all of the Navarro watershed, all of the Upper Russian, which is like Redwood Valley, all the way up to the top of Tomkai, or East Fork Russian, which is gets over into like up the Willits Grade, Black Bart, some of that area is East Fork Russian. Or the other way around, I reversed those. Headwaters is kind of to along the 101 corridor and to the northwest. And East Fork Russian goes out along the 20, includes part of Redwood Valley, part of Potter, and then all the way up to the county line between Mendo and Lake. Other cannabis priority watersheds, Middle Fork, I think it's Middle Fork Eel. There's only 6 of them. I should have them memorized, but there's a lot of Middle Fork, South Fork of the North Fork kind of stuff we make jokes about. And so I don't know, we map it and we'll, if you're in it, you'll probably get prioritized. If you're not in it, you're not going to get kicked out or not assisted. It just is one way for us to look at what do you need on that site, depending upon where you are. The other prioritization for watershed is under the California Water Action Plan. The entire South Fork Eel River watershed is prioritized for treatment based upon connections back to the Clean Water Act, that basically the dewatering of that watershed and the over sedimentation of that watershed. So if operations of your cultivation site impact the South Fork eel, or if your LSA has work to be done in it that could reduce impacts in the South Fork eel, then we'll be prioritizing you. Impact issues, second category of considerations for selection or prioritization are if there is a clearly identifiable sensitive species or habitat potential impact, those could be already called out in a biological report that you have, or in a sensitive species and habitat review project referral comment. So that was done by the county and then referred to DFW. Or maybe we just, sometimes you just know, if you're doing something on what's like a year-round stream that has salmon in it, and it's impacting that stream, you're located on a main waterbed, like water body down in the valley floor, you may get prioritized. And then needs-based. So if any one of the agency processes is calling out that you need a biological assessment, we're going to try and help you very early on. If your final agreement or OPLA are coming to expiration, so that's a term period related, then we're going to prioritize you. So let's say, if some folks that have already applied, it says like, how far out from now does your LSA expire? And if you're in like the early category, like within 6 months or within 3 months, we're going to look at you right away and see if we can assist with filing an extension so that you're not expiring. Or if you have an OPLA and it's about to expire or did expire. Any sort of LSA implementation struggles, that's a big category and vague, but there's a lot of folks that are just struggling with LSA implementation. So you need another design plan in order to get to your final, or you need money to buy the pipe to do the work. And any of the compliance plans, those fall into needs. So it's a DFW funded program. So they're definitely wanting to get the money going towards things that assist notifiers with their requirements. And then the equity category, the CDFW Cannabis Restoration Grant Program Qualified Cultivator Fund has what's listed as a co-benefit. So they elevate your application for review and funding if you say that you're going to prioritize meeting equity, verified people or needs. And so if you are LEAP verified and you have documentation from this county, whatever that documentation looks like, and that documentation has also changed over time, and you provide that, then we'll be elevating your application. And then we have this other category for severely disadvantaged or disadvantaged communities. Those are called SDACs or DACs. And depending upon the map you look at, we're still working out which map we're using. A lot of the county used to, all of it at one point, except for the city of Ukiah limits, was an SDAC, which meant that any sort of financial assistance program in our region should go towards people that are in the area. Their cultivation site is located in the area that's a DAC. So those are the basic eligibility requirements, and then selection considerations. And here, now I'm going to go into the process. And I'm running a little bit behind. I'm going to run through process, and then I'll skip quickly through the last few slides, which are pretty general. So here's the process. Go to ruralresilienceproject.com, that website. There is an apply here, apply now, like really basic, really clear button. Click on that button, it'll take you to an application form. Sometimes we call it an eligibility intake form. We had version 1.0, and then we have version 2.0 now as we refined our process. Fill out that form, turn it in with all of as many of the attachments as you can at that initial time that you apply. Once you submit that, Courtney sees it, and Courtney will do her RRP cursory review, her or her staff looking at, are they eligible? Are they in the county? Are they automatically kicked out because, or maybe kicked out because of, as kicked out's not a great word, just the automatically not as clear or automatically clear. Once they're deemed to be eligible, then they're passed to Mainspring, my company, to do an initial technical review. And I'll scan through all of your responses and the documents you provided and get a sense of which of the service categories, one or several of them, could you be assigned to. Then you get fed to to CDFW, and they're going to calibrate periodically, not every single application, but in batches. They're going to calibrate, are we all doing, are we doing what they approved us to do? That's probably like an every 2-week type of process. And then you'll be approved for technical assistance services by DFW. Then there'll be some documents for you to fill out that approve, it's a signed document saying, yes, you're going to receive services under this grant, and it's going to have a project scope to it. And like there's particular form, what do they call it? Yeah, there's a qualified cultivator agreement and a landowner access agreement. And those are requirements from CDFW. So if you want to receive funding under this program, you've got to be willing to sign those agreements. Courtney, it'd be good for us to put examples of those up on the website so people could see them in advance, because they may not want to. It might be so like, I don't want anybody else coming here or saying anything. And then once you go through those like signing of document steps, then you'll be assigned to a technical services provider. And I'm going to go through what that looks like. So let's say during my technical review, step 3, I see that you've got a project referral comment document that came back from CDFW that says that you need a biological assessment done, and you don't have a biological assessment at all, or you haven't provided it, or you have one done, maybe it's outdated, or maybe it was really only a desktop version, didn't involve a field assessment, or let's say your site project area expanded, so you like moved some hoops from here to there, or moved, it could even be a cultivation style change and area change. Then I would say, okay, that person needs bioservices. So I would assign you to the technical service provider for bioservices, which is WRA. And between Mainspring and WRA, we have an internal process where we're going to be passing information to them. They'll then do their review. They'll calendar a site visit. They'll come out to your property, probably with me or somebody from my staff. And then together we'll determine what you need in order to meet the standard of whatever the agency is that says that you needed that form, which is again an array of things. And they'll develop that document and they'll pass the document. Eventually it'll make it back to you into your hands, and then you are responsible for passing it to the agency that required it. If it's LSAA plans related things, you'll come to Mainspring, that I'll be the technical service provider for that task. So I'll do the early review, we'll run you through DFW approval, you'll get assigned to services, you'll come back to Mainspring, and myself and my staff, we're gonna be writing a lot of these little reports that we kind of wish we never had to write more, but we'll do it because it's a good thing and people need them, and they're pretty simple. So some of these are templates like the water management plan, diversion infrastructure plan, or filing for an extension. And if you need design plans such as engineer services, so you have a draft agreement, and it says, we can't issue you a final until you give us a professionally, experienced professional, they use different terms, or qualified professional QP developed design plan. And I determined that it needs to go through a civil engineer, then we would refer you to Munsell Civil Engineering. You need to work with my company in Munsell in order to have them come out, do a site visit, look what you got going on, and develop the design plans that you need, give them back to you for you to submit to DFW to move on in that conversation with DFW to get to a final LSA. That's the, when Courtney and I were just talking right before opening up the webinar, I was like, I really wish we had like 7, 8, 9, 10. But at the time that we made up the webinar, we were really focusing on the early steps. And, I would say in some ways, just like work with us. We're not like building the plane while we're flying it. I hate that phrase. Like the county used it all the time, and it didn't make me feel any better any time that I heard it. So we're not saying that. But there is a lot of malleability and adaptability to what our program is within certain parameters. We've been approved with a large amount of funding to offer services to meet people's needs in order to get through the licensing process. So it's likely, depending upon your site location, your needs, and your status, that we can assist you with something. So go through the process of applying or asking questions if you're not sure yet, and then we'll get you in the queue and work with you to help you get what you need in a timely way. That's all. I talked about like technical assistance services, the long discussion about the different categories 1 through 6, and then another 1 through 6 about the process of how do you apply, what are eligibility and selection considerations. And now I'm going to quickly show a slide on education. We've been approved for an education component, which is 9 webinars. This is one of them, and 3 workshops. And the remaining 11 offerings of 8 webinars and 3 workshops on site are going to cover, these are some of the sample topics that we're going to be covering. I'm going to skip forward. I know it's a quick show of that, just so I'm a little bit running behind here. Just so folks know, we offer, it was important to me, there's a need to offer all services in other languages. And so we're able to do that and offer everything in Spanish. So if you know folks that speak Spanish, they should come, they should participate, let them know about it. All of the forms are available in Spanish. All the education materials, including this, will be translated somehow. I don't know how we're going to do that. Probably put like a running text on the side. And so it's just a cool thing. I'm proud of this, that we are not just focusing on folks that just speak English, but also meeting the needs of people that are licensed cultivators that are Spanish speaking only. So that is the last slide, and now it's Q&A. I'm a little behind, 8 minutes. Why don't I leave up the slide that shows the categories during the Q&A? There's that one. And I'm not sure where I'm supposed to look, Courtney.
So look to the side of your slide, and then also at the Q&A in the bottom. Right now, I think we're all caught up and answering them as we go.
Okay.
But I think
I might
maybe
need you to like read the question out loud. I can't see, I could take it off of full screen, but all I see, oh, Q&A. I'm clicking on the Zoom controls.
here's one for you. Here's a question.
Yes.
Can I be reimbursed for expenses that I've already incurred for the same services you are offering?
I wish, but no. Wouldn't we all love, I mean, I don't mean to make fun of you at all, but I would absolutely love if we could somehow figure out a reimbursement. I tried. So let's say for this program, no. I tried way hard for that. If I drop out of professional speak through LJAGP, which was written in great part with MCA, Hannah Nelson, and myself, and to have a very broad range of expenses covered under LJAGP, and to have the retroactive date be as far back in time as possible. And we couldn't get it back as far as I wanted by like several years, but we tried and we pushed for months on that. Same thing with LEAP. LEAP does cover reimbursement. Forward, LJAGP can go back. So unfortunately, under this program, no. If you've already done a bunch of these things and you paid for them, congratulations, we can't assist you with a reimbursement. If there's some future development that's related to something that you already paid for, potentially it could be covered by this, but it's forward-looking.
Okay, here's another question. If I'm working with a consultant, can I have them do the work and you pay them directly?
I'm going to say no, that we have an approved, this is a program that was developed by a team of professionals. We did the work non-compensated for in great part to write the grant. It took years to get to where we're being able to offer this. And we included a group of professionals that we had pre-developed relationships with and who were approved by CDFW, that the quality of work that they offer is recognized and meets the standard that CDFW had. Not to say that your consultant that you work with wouldn't fit into all of that category, but I knew that question was going to come up. And so unfortunately, no, but your consultant could be the one that communicates with us to make sure that the next step that you need, that you might pay them to do instead of paying them to do it, could be covered under the grant.
Another question. Are there any conflicts between this grant and LEAP grant applications?
Good question. The LEAP grant, you have to, well, many of these grants, you have to say if you've already applied for other funds. It's a good question because we didn't call out right now in our application. It doesn't say, have you applied for other funds to cover these same costs? So could you double dip? There's nothing right now, that would catch that in the application, but I think we would probably come to know that once we got down the line with working with you and would say, hey, let's say you've got, I think LEAP, let's say it was $50,000 and you put in $20,000 for your stream crossing upgrade costs. LEAP is a really broad list of costs that can go into that. So if we determine that we can bring you in and cover those same $20,000 of DFW implementation costs under this, it would free up $20K from your LEAP budget to be put towards other expenses or other reimbursements. So I wouldn't see there being a conflict of interest. I would like ways for them to work compatibly. Same thing with LJAGP. Even though that's backwards looking, all these take a long time. So you don't even know. Some people, a lot of people haven't received their LEAP funds yet. And so if you haven't yet been funded or signed your contract or ways to make a change to a contract, there are a lot of, as we all can imagine, like super tricky ways to make this actually flow out well and have there not be conflicts. It's going to come down to the timing. And I would recommend just open communication, transparency, so that we can use the funds and put them where they are best going to serve the region economically and also environmentally. That would fit what DFW would like to do.
Okay. Does this grant cover water storage design and build?
Good question. Yes, it will cover water storage design. That falls under the other design services. We have included a contractor who specializes in water storage design and build. And potentially, so the design costs, yes. The implementation or building of the structure, let's say it's a large volume steel water tank or a daisy chain of like 10 5Ks or 10Ks plastic storage tanks, the cost of those actual tanks and the permitting of them, if they're over the limit that the county requires a building permit for, those would potentially be brought in under the implementation grant. So this grant won't cover the cost of buying the tank or building or installing the tank, but the cost of the physical material, if it's deemed to be one of the sites that's selected, could come in under Category 5 implementation grant.
Okay, next question. Do I need a biological assessment if I already have an annual license with the DCC?
Maybe. Depends upon what your LSA says. That's the first place I would look. I would look at where you were and geographically located, watershed wise, and sensitive species region. I'm going to speak to this very recently. in the last 3 months or so. Like there's been a pivot in how the DCC has been processing provisionals to annuals. We were under the impression that everybody was going to need some sort of biological report that demonstrated they met the requirements of our local environmental impact report once it came out. And I'm like, the time and the years are like rolling in a way I can't say back when that was. But at one point we were like, oh no, like what, another hoop? Like, come on, enough hoops down the line for people to get that last thing that they needed. And DFW recognized that. And so they came back to Courtney and I and said, hey, would you do this add-on and add on, something like 300 biological assessments, 150. Like we threw these big numbers out there. We had to pick a number in order to write the budget to say, and an estimated average cost for like different levels of simple, complex, complex plus. We came up with these terms that work for us internally. Since that time of when we wrote the grant and got it approved really quickly, right around the beginning of when we got approved, we met with some folks from some other agencies, it's particularly DCC. And because I started to receive emails from clients saying, hey, look at this email I got from the DCC saying I got my annual. And they said, your scientific amendment has been approved, and they'd never submitted a scientific amendment. So there's still some mystery going on in the background. This may be a topic of a subsequent webinar once we know a little bit more, and we could like confidently say what we think is going on with approval from those agencies for us to relay the information. So long answer to say, currently I'm seeing people transitioned from provisional to annual without having done a scientific amendment that included a biological report. And it connects back to a firm hired by the county, paid for by LGAG funds, that wrote the EIR and is also writing site-specific addenda for every single provisional licensee in Mendocino County. They're passing those to the DCC. The DCC is then transitioning people from provisional to annual. That doesn't mean that it's necessarily going to meet all biological requirements for assessment. The need for a bioassessment could come in from a different agency. 99% of the time, it's going to be coming from CDFW. So the answer is maybe, but I would go back to, does your LSA require it? Were you referred to DFW during the local sensitive species habitat review process? And if so, then you may need it. And if you're not sure, go ahead, apply, check the I don't know box. There's a lot of the answers in the intake form have an I don't know, I'm not sure. Tell us what you do or don't know. And because it might be that it changes during the life of this grant as well. That's highly likely given how things have gone over the last 8 years or so, the permitting process, right? They say run left and they're like, no, run right. And they're like, no, run the middle. No, run left again. So to be determined, maybe no, maybe yes. Thanks, Courtney. Keep going.
Okay, next question. If all LSAA requirements have been met and my farm has an annual license, would I have a chance in your priority structure to apply for a pond installation project to get me off of groundwater for irrigation?
Good question. I don't want to say no, but if it's not driven by an agency requirement, it's going to be low prioritization. If your water source for irrigation is a groundwater well, I would want to look at how close is that well to a surface water body? How much water are you taking from the well? What size of your cultivation, your annual water usage to determine potential impact to surface water or groundwater in the region, to be able to make the argument to DFW, hey, this isn't required by their LSA, but we happen to have a whole bunch of extra money. This is in that scenario. And can we move this one forward to construct a pond for them and have it be rainwater collection? They prefer to fund rooftop rainwater catchment into hard tanks over a pond. And again, we've got to think of this like DFW is the funder. So they're the lens through which review also needs to pass. And they've got their priorities, which are many times not directly in alignment with what the cultivator business priorities are. So they're probably going to say no to the pond, but they may say yes to a tank if it would get you completely off of your other water source. And in some of my grants, they've required a 100% like abandonment of the surface water or groundwater source that was used previously for cultivation water. in exchange for them funding the construction of the tank, putting gutters on the house, and all of the catchment, filtration, pumping, moving around infrastructure so that the cultivation could rely only on rainwater. I'm now working with them to, just recommend like smart ag business infrastructure, which is not wholly dependent on only one water source. That we live in a drought, flood, drought, flood, drought, flood region. We could have a low water year and your rain catchment could not catch enough water to meet your cultivation needs. So maybe you have a partial back and forth. You could have two sources. I'm saying like you do 80% of your water from rainwater catchment, but if you need to supplement that in like August, when your rainwater catchment is empty, you could pump from your well in August under a pumping agreement that you might limit how many gallons per day you can pump from your well, so you don't dewater the water table in your region too excessively over a short period of time. All of these are going to have maybe and like ... and question marks in all directions, but next, are there more?
Okay. So this question I'm going to go ahead and answer in the Q&A. It's about if you've already submitted an application and after seeing this webinar, you have some ideas or you want to make any changes to an existing application. I'm going to go ahead and just put the email into the Q&A. Go ahead and send an email there and we can help you revise your current application.
Yes, we were expecting that, totally understand that. And also our form went through version 1.0, version 2.0. So if you've already applied, you should have received back one or multiple communications back from RRP saying we got your application and also, hey, come to this webinar. Like now you're on the list of people we're going to contact. If you've already applied, we're using all of the applicants that have come in so far to test run through our whole internal system of review, passing to me, passing to DFW, passing back to me. It's like we're like playing rugby or something, and then passing to the actual technical assistance provider. And this is a program we're studying from the moment that we got funded, and we're running as fast as we can, along with all of our other professional and life responsibilities. But the goal is get the system up and going as fast as possible. And we couldn't even give this webinar until we could explain what the system was. We started drafting this webinar and it was like, wow, we really need to figure out what we're doing before we're going to go tell people about it, because we weren't really clear on how do we explain what we're going to do. It's really different from how we proposed it in a grant proposal. Wasn't delivered to the grant proposal in a way that we could then just directly offer out to the public to say, here's what we're offering.
Okay, last question. When is the deadline to apply?
There's no deadline. You can apply at any time. Like other grants locally that we've experienced, like there's a lot of money and then there might be no money left. I don't think it'll go like that. So it's a rolling application period, which means there's no deadline. There's no time period when we'll stop accepting applications. We're reviewing as they come in. Once we figure out all of the internal back end mechanisms for taking in and how we share information, like we have to set up this very not elaborate or complex, but we need to develop the whole back end of like application number 1 comes in, number 2 comes in, 3 comes in. Where do we look at all those? How do I go and look at it to see who needs what? What's an initial assessment of eligibility, initial assessment of service categories? Oh, wow, their LSA expires in a month, Can we even meet their need? Are we going to be ready fast enough to help them? So if you've already applied, we're seeing them. Thanks for applying. If you haven't applied yet, please do. And please share the word out that this is out there. There is a PR approach that's going out through MCA. We've got a large email list that's going out from RRP. I was going to go and present about it at the General Governments Committee meeting at the end of January, but they can't. That's at Mendocino County, one of the supervisors committees, but they canceled that meeting last week. Otherwise, I would have presented about it there. In this website, the webinar will be available via the website forever, until we're not doing any of this anymore. And so at any time you can come back and watch it or refer other people to it. And if you're not sure, send an email to Courtney, hello@ruralresilienceproject.com, or go ahead and submit the intake form and we'll start to work with you. I think so far we've received somewhere around 35 to 40 applications and have been reviewing those, and of those already identified for sure one that definitely needs a bio. and maybe like 5 to 10 that might need a bio, and 5 to 10 that definitely need LSA implementation services, another 5 that need some sort of plans. But I haven't dove in and gotten into my level of technical review to really determine what people need yet. We were more doing the cursory outs, like high, more zoomed out level of review to see what were the types of applications that were coming in, how were we collecting the information from them, was it coming in a way that we could work with easily and quickly? Not quickly, but was it a way that did we get the information that we needed, or did everybody's application require a follow-up phone call? Or like, hey, you sent us document A, we need the last page, I need what you sent to DFW to determine what your other needs are. If there's other consultants on the call, Courtney, I'm fine with people also reaching out to me, but I think we should direct things through RRP. So email that hello at, and I'm assuming that there are some other consultants and you work with 5, 10, 20, however many people it is that you work with. And just the concept is let's assist as many people as we can efficiently and properly in a timely way to get what they need and to satisfy the different agency requirements. And just on the side is like my motivation for this is anything related to local economic development is really important to me, sustainable economic development and supporting the cannabis industry fitting into that. And then anything related to watershed restoration and salmon habitat and species protection is like a passion project for me. So those overlap exactly in our region with cannabis and protected species, especially salmonids. There, I got to say my little speech at the end. Thanks.
That's it
What
for
else you got?
Q&A. That's it. I think you can
Okay,
go
cool.
forward.
So I'm going to go forward back to, questions are always welcome later. Like we said, write them down, send an email, watch the video again. You could put it on 1.5 speed, those fun ones like go for a walk and listen. Closing out the Q&A that I had open, and I'm going to put up a couple closing slides because we're right at our wrap period. Excuse me while I look to the side. So next steps, ruralresilienceproject.com/apply. Just go to their website. It's really easy to find your way there and see the application button. Sign up for the webinar series. Courtney, do people that apply, are they automatically signed up for the webinar series, or if they need to submit something in order to get on the webinar series but not submit an application?
They just need to register as the webinars and workshops are posted.
Okay. If you have any questions, there's a number of different RRP email addresses you can reach to, whether it's team@ or hello@. So next steps, we're anticipating, we just didn't know if we were going to have like 150 applications right away or 10. And luckily we're on the lower end while we figure out all of our processes. So here's the second to last slide, just acknowledging the different partners that we're working with. So as I mentioned, our funding partner is the Cannabis Restoration Grant Program from CDFW. We also received an initial early grant, RRP did, through the North Coast Resource Partnership. They offer technical assistance funding, which technical assistance can also look like grant writing. And so we wrote a proposal to them and were approved for, I think it was $15,000 to put towards the cost of my services to write the full grant to submit to CDFW. And that covered a portion. Writing these grants is really complex. It takes a lot of time. I'm always, especially one like this that has so many different compartments, and just looking at the strategic partners, like each one of these people had to submit a budget, a scope of work, sign a contract, and all of that had to be fit in. So of our strategic partners, High Tide Permaculture is going to be offering the holistic design services and also teaching webinars and workshops. That's Dan Marr, and he's an excellent presenter and educator. Highly recommend participating. He's going to bring in a whole different lens than what I do, which is like super compliance minded. WRA Environmental Consultants, they'll be leading on all the biological components and possibly some things related to LSA. Loreto Rojas, she's going to be doing all of our English to Spanish translation. Hannah Nelson is coming in and helping. She's already been helping set up all of the RRP preliminary documents and infrastructure documents, and she may also be helping with some technical assistance services for things related to the DCC or the county. And just great to have a legal mind, bar certified, to help oversee how we do things so that we're not stepping in the wrong direction at all. Mainspring Consulting is my company, and then MCA. The original idea is that all this is going to be run through MCA, and original ideas, and it's still in there. MCA is a participatory member. They're a partner for our outreach component. Court Munsell and Munsell Civil Engineering, they have office here in Ukiah where I am, and they also have offices in Healdsburg. They'll be leading on all of the civil engineering and potentially surveying required things if there's land surveys required. That's unlikely, but maybe. Yard to Garden, I believe, is Carlota, right? She's going to be doing irrigation system design and implementation, and she'll be teaching a workshop as well. So he'll be coming out and looking at how are you currently irrigating. She is a local landscaper and fantastic irrigation whiz. So online, most cultivators know more about irrigation than anybody else. So, but there's always some room for improvement. And then Leach Water Systems is a general engineering contractor. He's out of McKinleyville, who's partnered with me on other grants, and he specializes in design and build of large volume steel water storage tanks. So like 100,000 gallons up to 500,000 gallon tanks. He does like large tanks for municipal systems, like the city of Ukiah water tank, for example. And he also specializes in rooftop rainwater collection, treatment, and storage. That is all. Those are our partners. So here's our thanks for attending. If you've got any follow-up questions or comments or only positive ones, you can email hello@ruralresilienceproject.com. Thanks all for your time. I'm 1 minute over. That's all. That's all, folks. Bye, everybody, if you're still there.